So good evening, everyone, and welcome to Rachel Bloom and Tovah Feldshuh, a conversation between a television daughter and mother. My name is Jenna Weiss, and I'm the manager of public programs at the Jewish Museum. It's my pleasure to welcome you to this event, which is part of the series Unpacking the Book, Jewish Writers in Conversation, co-presented by the Jewish Museum, Jewish Book Council, and Tablet Magazine. If this is your first time attending an Unpacking the Book event, welcome. You can watch footage from many of our past programs on Jewish Book Council's YouTube page. And after the event, please visit the Jewish Museum's website to sign up for our e-news and hear more about all of our upcoming public programs. Closed captioning is available tonight for those of you who wish to use it. Simply click on the CC icon at the bottom of your screen to watch the event with captions turned on. It's truly my honor to be welcoming these two celebrated actors and performers, and I'll just say it, Jewish icons, Golden Globe and Emmy Award winner, and the co-creator and star of Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, Rachel Bloom, and six-time Emmy and Tony nominee, Tovah Feldshuh. Before we begin, I would like to introduce Naomi Firestone Teeter, Executive Director of Jewish Book Council, to share a little bit more about tonight's program.
Thank you, Jenna. I'm so pleased to be able to welcome you this evening on behalf of Jewish Book Council. This is our 7th year producing the Unpacking the Book literary series in partnership with the Jewish Museum and Tablet Magazine. And I continue to be in awe of the incredible conversations that have emerged from each program. Books are a powerful vehicle to think about and discuss Jewish life, identity, culture, and history, and especially important this year, to bring the community together. And while we love to gather in person for these discussions, the virtual world has allowed so many more of you to be with us from all over the world, and that's truly been a gift. So thank you for being with us for this particularly special evening featuring two remarkable women, Tovah Feldshuh and Rachel Bloom, who wear many hats, including that of author. We're proud to host them to discuss their respective memoirs, Lilyville, Mother, Daughter, and Other Roles I Played, and I Want to Be Where the Normal People Are, with moderator extraordinaire, Stephanie Butnick. For those of you unfamiliar with Jewish Book Council, our mission is to educate, enrich, and strengthen the community through Jewish literature. From public programs such as this one, awards and conferences, to our literary journal, Paper Brigade, essays by Jewish authors, book club resources, interviews, and reading lists, JBC provides tools for substantive conversations about Jewish life and identity. I encourage you to join the conversation and find out more at jewishbookcouncil.org. Before we begin tonight's program, I'd like to very quickly thank the Jewish Museum, and specifically Jenna Weiss, and our media sponsor, Tablet Magazine, the premier publication of Jewish news and ideas in the US. A very special thank you as well to Evie Sapphire Bernstein from Jewish Book Council for managing the ins and outs of this program. And I'm especially grateful to JBC's board of directors for their continued support of Jewish literature, ideas, and conversation. A few housekeeping notes before I pass the baton. If you would like to ask a question of our panelists, please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. Please also be on the lookout in the chat for links to purchase this evening's books. I hope you will purchase both of our wonderful authors' memoirs if you haven't already done so. And remember that if you send us an image of your receipt, we'll send a signed bookplate and special JBC goodies. And now I'd like to introduce you to our moderator. Stephanie Butnick is the deputy editor of Tablet and a host of Unorthodox, the #1 Jewish podcast on iTunes. She is the author, along with her podcast co-host, of the newest Jewish encyclopedia, From Abraham to Zabars and Everything in Between. And with that, thank you so much for joining us, and please enjoy the evening.
Naomi, Jenna, thank you so much for inviting me to moderate tonight's event, which I know everyone is excited about. We have two very special guests this evening. Please join me in welcoming in the Zoom square, I think above me, if you're seeing this the same way I am, the one and only Rachel Bloom, the wildly talented comedian, actress, writer, and singer who created, co-executive produced, and starred in the TV series Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, for which she earned a Golden Globe and Critics' Choice Award. Her collection of essays, poems, and more is called I Want to Be Where the Normal People Are. And below me in this Brady Bunch Zoom on the other side of the screen, we have theater icon Tovah Feldshuh, known for her starring role as Israeli Prime Minister Golda Meir in Golda's Balcony, which is the longest running one-person show in Broadway history. She played Yentl in Yentl. Before it was Yentl, she was in Pippin and many other plays. She played Naomi Bunch on Crazy Ex-Girlfriend and even entered the zombie universe on AMC's The Walking Dead. Her new memoir is called Lilyville, Mother, Daughter, and Other Roles I've Played. Welcome, Rachel and Tovah.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you for having us.
Where are you zooming in from this evening or this afternoon?
Rachel looks like
Ibiza.
Thank you for fitting us in to your beachy schedule.
Yes, I've been drinking mucho Modelo.
I'm from New York. I'm right here in my dining room
Amazing.
in Manhattan.
Love that. We have a very big crowd tonight. I want to say there are more than 20 Barbaras here tonight. I was just scanning.
I literally was about to say the same thing. I was looking through, because you know I'm a shitster. I just want to look. I look through the Q&A questions. I look through the dismissed Q&A questions, and of course I see who's there. I've never seen so many women named Barbara together in my life.
I mean, I think this is like the Venn diagram event for Barbaras. I don't know what that means, but I love them. I'm glad they're here. I know one of them. So that's pretty exciting.
It's a really common name.
Yeah. Tell us, and Barbaras, introduce yourselves in the Q&A, I guess. So it's so special to have you here. Obviously, you know, it's an embarrassment of riches having both of you and both of your wonderful books. But, you know, as this Zoom crowd knows, you have played mother and daughter, Naomi and Rebecca Bunch on Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. It is a deeply complicated, deeply entertaining mother-daughter relationship. But, you know, as I read both of your books, again, both wonderful, we learn a lot about you as women, as daughters, as mothers. And I'm excited tonight to dig into some of the ways, some of what's in the book might just sort of be informing a little bit of what we see on screen. So we're going to get to Rachel and Tovah and your books at some point, but I want to start with Rebecca and Naomi, our biblical heroines from Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. So Rachel, at what point do you know that the only person who can play your mother on Crazy Ex-Girlfriend was Tovah Feldshuh? How do you ask her? How do you butter her up? And then Tovah, what do you say when you get this request?
You know, I remember being on set and I was like, I want my mother, well, whoever plays my mother has to be a Jew. He has to be.
Representation.
And I literally went on Wikipedia just to start brainstorming, and I was like, list of Jewish actresses. And then I saw Tovah's name, and I already knew of Tovah, and I was like, oh my God. And then we watched YouTube videos. We watched a YouTube video of her one-woman show, and we were like, I mean, yeah, she's perfect. So someone called your agent, Tovah, I think, right?
I got a call from my agent, Arthur Turetsky, and said, you have an offer to do this new series called Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, where you'd be the mother of the crazy ex-girlfriend. I said, tell me about this. I said, well, it's Rachel Bloom. She's a graduate of Tisch. My parents were both graduates of NYU. So I immediately categorized her as a New York girl, even though she was born and raised in Manhattan Beach. She has the sensibility of an East Coast kid because her brain is like this. And maybe that's just because she is a Jew. I don't know. But in all events, they laid out the part and they said you'd have to sing and dance. And I said, thank God there's a series that's actually asking of me what I was trained to do for the Broadway and off-Broadway stage, for the theater. And I was given the part. It was on a red carpet. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Jack. Thank you, Adam Schlesinger. May he rest in peace. And the first thing I got was a 5-page solo called Where's the Bathroom? That I would then record at the Sunset Studios, Columbia Studios, in Studio A, where Garland recorded, Sinatra recorded, with the wonderful, I think it was Stephen Gold. And it was a thrill. Of course, I studied it here. As my mother would say, you only have one chance to make a first impression. So I studied the material and I got to the recording. And I knew what I was doing, and I asked Stephen to change the key, and he did. Saying thank you. I wanted it to be very, very comfortable so that I could sing it where I lived. And Rachel and I think it was my second episode. The first episode I started with my legs in the stirrups of a gynecologist's office.
You on the FaceTime, yeah.
Yes, that was great. That was great. That was, again, she is without borders. My Rachel Bloom is without borders, and that's probably what makes a genius. When I went to Sarah Lawrence, they would say, it's excellent, but is it original? So Rachel Bloom is an original. But we knocked off that number together, I swear to God, in about 2 takes. And afterwards, she said something to the effect, you see, you should believe in Broadway actors, believe in trained people. And if you look at her show, these people were all incredibly skilled in all areas of the theater, as well as film and television. Yeah. It was a great experience. It was great.
It was fantastic. You came with such, as they say, like great actor business. You came so prepared. You had to for a song like that. It was one extended, very dynamic monologue. And you know, when we wrote that song, the chorus was actually the thing that had us stumped, because I'd written a lot of the verse lyrics, and I was with Adam and Jack, and we were like, okay, this is all shaping into something. But Adam really astutely, you know, I think there was a version where like the song was called "It's Me, Your Mother," you know, where that was the chorus, and Adam was like, no, we could do better. Like, what's something, I don't know, what's something your parents say when they come into your house? And I was like, well, my father-in-law, when he gets off the plane, just asks, where's the bathroom? And Adam was like, where's the bathroom? That's perfect. And he was right. He was absolutely right. And I learned so much about writing hooks from him, and especially song titles, to just, is there any way to reach beyond the kind of obvious?
And so this is definitely beyond the obvious. I mean, so for the Barbaras who have not seen Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, this is when Tovah, as Naomi, has flown cross country to see her daughter, who has disappointed her by leaving her law job, her great New York law job, moving to California. And the first thing she wants to know, she busts into the house and just says, where's the bathroom? Tells you look chubby, tells you, you know, says your house is a hovel.
But Stephanie, I don't say it. I sing it.
Oh yeah, sing it. I mean, it's close.
Very, very different. In other words, when the actor can no longer speak, when the urge is so great, the actor breaks into song. Curly comes out at dawn and looks at these huge, beautiful fields in Oklahoma, and he goes, oh, what a beautiful morning. That's where it is. So it's not just where's the bathroom, it's where's the bathroom. I came in with my legs almost crossed. Where's the bathroom? Where's the bathroom? I need to find your bathroom. And then they gave me, Rachel and Jack and Adam gave me the tempo for that kind of over exaggerated need. And the minute you have that, you have the beginnings of good farce, and you have comedy. Yeah. So it was by the way, you're looking healthy, and by healthy, I mean chubby. I don't mean that as an insult. I'm just stating it as fact. I see your eczema is back. So, I mean, you just can't get any better. This rapier changes based on need, because in order to save her, I have to change her. In order to save Rachel or Rebecca, I have to change her because she's going off the path.
So I'm curious, you know, Rachel, you've said that Tovah practiced her songs with a highlighter in her mouth. I mean, did you learn from this? Like, what did you learn from each other on set and off?
It's because I didn't have my cork. When they teach you classical speech, to make your consonants not lazy. And this is a patter song, right? I am the very model of a modern major general, right? Like that. Has to be so. Where's the bathroom? Where's the bathroom? I need to find the bathroom. So in that where the bathroom, that's always wrong. Where's the bathroom? Where's the bathroom? I need to find your bathroom. Tell me that you have a bathroom in this hovel. You go home. Because my job is what? That you should understand. It's for you. It's to communicate to you, and of course to my daughter. But it's all for the house.
What does the cork do? What is?
It's so funny. I can think of the many things we could practice on, Rachel. You can put this in your mouth, and it makes your lips have to curl around all the sounds of the words, particularly the consonants. So speak the speech I pray as I pronounce it to you. It exercises your lips so that they can be more effortless when you take the cork out. Yeah.
Girl, but
two fingers.
Well, I feel like when I Google,
yes.
I'm good.
Rachel, don't put your fingers too far back. You'll choke on it. That it's very, that's we used to practice it. I remember the Guthrie. Speak the speech, I pray, was I pronounced it to you, trippingly on the tongue. Speak the speech, I pray, was I pronounced it to you, trippingly on the tongue. So it's right, accurate, excellent, effortless. And it's the effortlessness that separates they used to say the men from the boys, but certain people from other people. As whatever's politically correct now, Rachel, you'll have to teach me.
Oh, that's a whole other Zoom.
That's another, it's another.
So,
Go ahead.
no, please.
No, so I have this kid. She's an upper middle class Jewish kid. She goes to Harvard and Yale. She's going to be making partner in a substantial New York law firm. And instead, she falls in love with some camp kid who's not of her religion, not of her ethnic background, who's an unemployed skateboarder and goes to West Covina, California, which is like going to Podunk. It's like me falling off a Broadway stage and ending up in an underground theater in Siberia. So of course I went to check to see if my baby is okay. How's my baby? And then I'm trying to fix her and mold her. And it was very easy to write Lilyville coming from Naomi Bunch.
So Rachel, it seems like you definitely chose the right actress for the role of your mother.
Yeah, definitely. I truly can't picture anyone else in that role. And of course, as then we saw Tovah play that role, we began to write more towards the way, especially like Tovah interpreted that character, which is always really fun. It's something that me and Aline Brosh McKenna, my co-creator, and the writers' room discovered is that when you cast someone and it's a long-running show, you can really start to add specificities in the character that feel so unique and alive, because you can take qualities from the actors themselves, you can take qualities from the way that the actors play these characters. It's really it's an experience you get only on a TV show that you can't get on a movie.
It's an amazing skill, how you do it. Hats off. Because it wasn't, I mean, I was so grateful to be there all 4 years, sporadically, but all 4 years. It was thrilling. And we had 2 more musical numbers that Adam and Jack and Rachel gave me. And of course, I love them. I got to do a rap.
Well, we also have a question already about Remember That We Suffered, the number that Patti LuPone joins for. We'll save that for the Q&A portion. I don't want to give it, I can't do too much excitement right now.
Oh yeah, the Q&A is the Barbaras are exploding. Yeah. Someone, by the way, asked if they could have an admission ticket for the museum. They used the Q&A to ask about that, and that just really tickles me.
There's also a Barbara Ann, but who's Yiddish, whose name is Basha in Yiddish. So I think that's really great. So Basha Ann, we have everyone. So let's talk about these wonderful books. They match really nicely, which I really appreciate. So, I have a question for both of you. Rachel, you take this first. It's a 2-parter. First of all, what made you decide that it was time to, take a break from performing, put down your own backstory as opposed to a character's, and take on this idea of writing a book? And then both of your books are sort of quite performative. Tovah, your table of contents is written out like a theater program. Here, I'll show it to people who haven't seen it yet. Sort of, we see Act 1.
Oh, yeah.
And then, Rachel, some chapters of your book are actually just plays or scripts for plays are written in that format. So once you knew you were writing a book, already a big undertaking, how quickly did you decide that you were going to have to sort of keep these, you want to mirror the theatrical structures or strictures that you guys both clearly respond so well to?
Well, it's funny that writing a book, you would phrase it as taking a break from performing, because it's completely the opposite. It was a lot harder because I've been performing my whole life. I've only been writing a book since, a year and a half ago. It's really hard. It's really hard to write a book, especially if you've never written one before. My editor, Suzanne, had approached me because she'd seen my work on Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, and she'd said, do you have any interest in writing a book? And so I kind of had the good fortune to start brainstorming the book and thinking about what the book could be with her. She was an unbelievable editor, really guided me on the process. And I never wanted to write like a memoir. I'm for many reasons, but also an original title for the book was like, no one wants to read a memoir by a 30-year-old. It was like, what am I going to talk about? What lessons could you? I'm not that wise. I didn't want to be a memoir, and I write. My comedic style is very heightened. I like using high premises as a way to talk about very relatable human things. And so, and likewise, that's what I like reading. It's why I'm such a especially good comedy sci-fi fan. So I kind of wrote the way that I think about comedic concepts, and I also wrote a book that I would want to read. And as far as it being very theatrical, I wanted to change up the format of every chapter. And obviously writing for theater, writing scripts, that I know how to do very well. And so that's how I see a lot of life, especially my own life. So there's a playbill bio in the show. The entire chapter about me, my developing relationship with musical theater is written as a musical, and you can listen to it for free on my website as you're reading the book. Because that's how when I narrate my own life, that's still how I think of things.
What about you, Tovah? When did you decide it was time to share all your showbiz secrets?
I didn't decide. There was an agent at UTA named Albert Lee who was on a subway, and he listened to an interview I happened to do after I just climbed Mount Kilimanjaro with our son Brandon, and he likes Dalton Ross, who's a wonderful interviewer, with his partner Jessica. And he got to his office and he called my managers and he said, does Tovah Feldshuh have a literary agent? And they said no. And he said, I think she's got a writer's voice. I'd like to represent her. And he came to my living room. We looked out at the park and he said, what do you want to write about? I said, I just lost my mother. I want to make my mother into a television series. He said, well, we don't want a television series. I'm a literary agent. I need a book. Would you like to write a book about your mother? I said, sure. And I started to put pen to paper, and I agree with Rachel that it was one of the most uphill journeys I've ever taken as a neophyte. I mean, it was really a new skill, and I've written monologues for my nightclub acts and my concerts. I've usually write with other wonderful writers like Larry Amoros, Jeff Harner, my beautiful musical director, James Bossi. But I've written and successfully written, but just, monologues, Molly Kelly Kugelberg or whatever. And I had never written a book. So I wrote a series of stories that I was told I would check in with my editor every week, like we did at Sarah Lawrence with the Donning system. And she would say, brilliant, fabulous, brilliant. Then I handed her the manuscript and she said, this is not a book. I said, what? This is not a book. So I had, the usual Jewish catastrophic expectation. And I went back and I rewrote the book in a completely different form. I reformed the book. My dear friend, Jeff Harner, who directs me in my one-woman acts, Aging is Optional, because God, I wish it was, and probably should use the subjunctive there. And Tovah is Leona, where I play Leona Helmsley, said, Tovah, what do you know best? And I said, I guess I know theater best. He said, write it as a theater piece, which I thought was just brilliant. And I took his suggestion and I ran with it. And Jeff kept me company in the writer's room along with my wonderful assistant, Oliver Scholson, who happened to have been a linguistics major at Yale. So when I finished that manuscript, I had a boy here, 22 years old, who had just graduated inside the pandemic, who could check every comma, every colon, every semicolon, saving Hachette, a book club, and the Hachette publishers, and my wonderful Lauren Marino, a lot of hours in the proofreading room. And at first, the book was I thought some very beautiful vignettes that were pearls on a coffee table, not strung together. And by putting it in 3 acts with 2 intermissions, instead of getting chapters, you get scenes. Instead of getting a prologue, you get an overture. Instead of getting an afterword, you get exit music. Instead of getting acknowledgements, you get a cast party where I celebrate all the people who contributed to Lilyville, and mostly I celebrate my mother, because I'm in Rachel's camp. I wasn't going to write a celebrity memoir. First of all, I'm a Broadway kid who does film and television. What kind of a celebrity am I? I mean, I'm not Tom Cruise. I'm not an international entity. So I said, what can stop the conveyor belt? I've auditioned all my life. I said, what if I see my life through my mother's eyes and my mother sees her life through mine? So you have a Jewish mother who believes you can't have it all, a Jewish daughter who lives like you can. And how do they get along? They don't. They don't get along. I have a silent mother who manifested her love through deeds, through mitzvahs, and a verbal daughter who needed 3 words. I love you. I love you. I just didn't get those words until I asked for them when I was finally 18 years old. And the answer was right out of Fiddler. Of course I love you. What do you mean, do I love you? Of course I love. Who takes you in the Chrysler to your Hebrew school and your singing lessons and your dancing lessons and the piano lessons? And who dresses you at Saks Fifth Avenue? We only buy undergarments at Alexander's. And who cooks for you and makes sure you're in good shape and that you have a great school to go to and takes care of you? I do. She never said, I love you. And that created a whole universe that I manufactured to keep me company when I wasn't with my father. My father was my pillar of unconditional love. And I think he became my survival, but my mother became my resilience. And last thing, and then I'll give the floor. My mother happened to live till over 103 years old. So when I turned 40, she said, how much longer are you gonna blame me? And I said, not another minute. And I didn't. And once Dad died when she was 84, and we fought to save his life, she would live another 18 plus years. And I never let a day go by without choosing to be my mother's best daughter. So we had these 2 trees growing on opposite sides of a large lawn that eventually the branches bowered. And we found true intimacy out of choice, Also, my mother blossomed at the death of my father, and she loved my father very much, but she came from an era where your fate was sealed with the match you made, with the man you met. So it was like this.
So I think,
Eventually,
I think a great way to tell the story of your mother is to tell the story of what happened when she found out that you wanted to be an actress and go to Juilliard and study drama. Could you tell us a little bit about that? And then Rachel will come to you and hear a little bit about how your family, I see your birth mother is here and has staked that claim.
Have you seen that?
Yes, it was in the comments, but I would love to hear again from you after about what your family felt when you wanted to go into sort of the world, the biz.
So a little bit Lilyville. My mother Lily was born on a dining room table in the Bronx, 1534 Charlotte Street in 1911. And she lived a robust over 103 years young. And when I told her I wanted to be an actress, she said, I wanted to go to Juilliard. I said, Mommy, I want to be an actress. I want to go to Juilliard. And she said, you're not going to a trade school. And when I took her to Pippin, where I did a full out aerial act, 30 feet in the air with no net and no safety belt while I'm singing No Time at All by Stephen Schwartz and stopping the show because you put an old bird hanging upside down on a trapeze, singing a hit tune. If you do your job, you're going to get an ovation. And I did that at that matinee. And I went to my mother afterwards. I said, Mommy, 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 like a kid wanting mother's milk. How did I do? And she said that you should still have to earn a living like this and on a trapeze yet. So I took her to Golda Meir and it became that longest running one woman show. I said, Mom, she said, Tovah, I rate your parts by how you look. Dolly Levi was a 10, Golda Meir, 0. So that was my mother, Lily. She did not give an inch. And though all my parts took place in Hollywood and in New York and on the stage and in theater and in concert halls, they all happened within the dome of Lilyville. And to substitute for her lack of saying, I love you in the formative socialization of my life, these were, very heavy imprints. I substituted 1,000 people 8 times a week saying, I love you. And then eventually she came along, she blossomed and she changed. She became a matriarch and the head of the family. And she was hysterically funny, incredibly wise. And it ended up all right. So, and on her 103rd birthday, she did a vaudeville act. My older brother, David, who's head of the theater at Cornell, is also a medical doctor. He would feed her the circumstances. She was deaf by this time and show her punchlines, which she had written. She had, it would go like this. My sister Tovah took my mother to see Miss Saigon. And my mother said, after she finished seeing the show, isn't the point of theater not to have the helicopter? And this was in front of all the guests at her big 103rd birthday. And she came out after doing her act and she said, I should have been an actress. I'm not afraid of anything anymore. I'm not afraid of anything. And 10 weeks later, she would not be afraid to leave her body. And she would die on June 23rd. So it was a great life. It was a great journey, and it was a great death. And I tip my hat to you, Mommy.
So Rachel, how about you? When you say, you tell your family you want to leave California, go to Tisch, go to NYU, get into this world, what was that? Were they upset that you were going to trade school also?
Whenever Tovah talks about her mother, it's hard to top that or want to top that. No, my parents were very supportive of me going into the arts. My mom majored in music, and her father was an amateur actor, stand-up comedian, and director who sold. I think he wrote technical manuals by day from Brooklyn, but his real passion was show business. And so my mom was born with perfect pitch and started getting very good at the piano from a very young age. And my father would have her play at parties while he sang. So my mom was very used to it, not as a profession. I was not raised in a show business family at all. Despite the fact I'm from Southern California, the majority of people who are from Southern California and are in the industry grew up in it. I didn't. My father was a healthcare lawyer, but he married my mother when he was, I think, 38, 39, which was later, especially for the time. He was about 42 when I was born. But I think he just stopped worrying what people cared or about him or what people thought. And so I never felt pressure from my parents to do anything I didn't want to do. And that is a real blessing. And that's not me blowing smoke just because they're still alive.
And on this Zoom.
That's 100% true. They're on this Zoom. My parents are very much alive. But also I'll be respectful. They are still alive. But no, they always really supported that. It was more that I grew up in this place, Manhattan Beach, which didn't not support the arts. It just wasn't the thing that people really seemed to understand, or a very small amount of people understood the theater and why you went to see theater and why you did theater. It just wasn't really culturally part of Southern California in a kind of mass appreciation way, as if I'd lived in like Long Island or something. So no, very, very supportive actually.
And in your book, you write that you grew up in, quote, the type of household in which I didn't know a word of Hebrew, but knew every celebrity that had ever said anything anti-Semitic, which I found very relatable. And I think a lot of people maybe here tonight and your readers sort of know exactly what you're talking about. So what was your Jewish education like besides, like hating Mel Gibson before the rest of the world caught on?
Yeah, which is hard because my mom actually has a huge crush on Mel Gibson. There's a photo of him in the movie Ransom in like this closet we have, but I think this is pre-anti-Semitic comments. Look, he's very handsome. So look, here's the deal. My mom was not raised Jewish. She was raised incredibly secular. Maybe her oldest brother had a bar mitzvah, but there is something I think that happens when East Coast Jews move to the West Coast. Sometimes it's this sense of newness. It's this sense of I'm not bound by tradition anymore. And so my parents put me in Hebrew school. And then my grandparents who cared died, my father's parents. And I said to my parents when I was 10, I'm bored. I was at a conservative temple. I was behind in my Hebrew studies. A report card says Rachel is behind on her Hebrew studies and often brings up subjects that have nothing to do with Judaism. And I said, I want to quit. And they said, okay. So it wasn't forced upon me at all, which gave me a curiosity for it. And the culture of my family was quite Jewish. I mean, my yes, we knew everyone who said something anti-Semitic, we really identified as being Jewish. My grandfather would make Jewish jokes, jokes about being Jewish all the time. There was a strong Jewish identity that also made me very curious and wanting more because I opted out of being in Hebrew school. And what ended up happening was I eventually met a guy, my husband of 13 years, who was raised very religiously. His parents would say he was raised conservative. From my point of view, it's more orthodox. So we meet in the middle, we call it conservadox. But my husband went to yeshiva until 8th grade. He kept kosher until college. So through him, I've kind of almost gotten a huge wave of the things that I was almost curious about, that seemed kind of foreign to me. And it really has informed the way that I write. And I saw someone ask in the Q&A, what are my experience, what did I learn about the Holocaust growing up? And I certainly learned about it. And my father is very interested in history. My father's fascinated with World War II history. The joke is now he's retired, and especially during a pandemic, most of the programs he watches are just about Hitler. A lot of books about Hitler in my household growing up. I remember going to the Museum of Tolerance and hearing a survivor speak. I think I was interested in it because it seemed so far away. And I was an outsider where I grew up, not because I was Jewish, but I think that my Jewish identity informed that. And so I was always trying to study why I felt out of place. And the Jewish identity was a part of that. But then I met with my husband, and my husband's, all 4 of his grandparents are Holocaust survivors. And 2 of them were in Auschwitz. And so suddenly this thing that had seemed very in the distant past was not at all, was incredibly, in my face and present. And he actually has really, he has a really high bar. First of all, he was one of the writers of the songs, Remember That We Suffered. So he's very not precious about that kind of thing. But he also, and this is a whole other thing, but he has a real allergy to the subject of the Holocaust being a little milked for maybe like false emotion, or like, he's like, if you're going to bring up the Holocaust, it needs to be tasteful and not gratuitous. And so he has he's very sensitive to, like, in a piece of work, suddenly the Holocaust is brought up and he's like, oh, they want to just get points for being like a good piece of work because they brought up the Holocaust, but like, it really happened. It's not something that you can just, use to get a pat on the back for how good your movie is or whatever. That's not a comment on anything that I've done or that Tovah has done. It's been really interesting to go from the upbringing I had to someone who had a very different upbringing and a very different relationship to Jewish suffering and the Holocaust.
So let's talk about Remember That We Suffered, which is one of the most amazing songs. Obviously, Crazy Ex-Girlfriend is a TV show. It's also a musical. I mean, it's genre defying in so many ways. Remember That We Suffered. I was listening to it today. I mean, and I have like Streisand and Hitler. Like, I have that Streisand and Hitler, and that's just the greatest thing. So will you tell us a little bit, Rachel, about the song, where it comes in? Tovah, I read in your book that you are actually quite close with Patti LuPone, who plays the Scarsdale rabbi, who sings the song with you. I mean, could you tell us a little bit about that experience? And then I promise we'll get to some questions from our listeners, our audience, because they're chomping at the bit to ask you a lot of questions.
Well, I'll talk about the song, and I'll let Tovah talk about the experience, because I mean, truly, it was one of my favorite episodes to be on set for, because Tovah and Patti together on set and in the hair and makeup trailer were so funny. They're so funny together because they've known each other for years. They're both, of course, these icons in the theater, and it was what a treat. My husband actually co-wrote that episode. So that song kind of came from a song that I'd done previously that was on this album of comedic Hanukkah songs that I'd written a couple of years previously. We reworked a lot of things to become Remember That We Suffered. And the episode is a lot about Rebecca and the Jewish identity, and Rebecca resenting her Jewish identity, which is really her, of course, resenting herself, which is what her rabbi brings up. There's a self-hatred that she has because it's how she feels about herself. and especially she's unsure in her own relationship. It's also, the episode is very much kind of West Coast butting heads with East Coast, because again, the East Coast, there is a tradition, there's a formality there that you just don't have on the West Coast. I don't think there's a single restaurant in Los Angeles that you have to wear a jacket to enter. But there's like a million of them in New York City. Anyway, so that song is just it's based in the truth of every Jewish song is in a minor key. Every holiday is about a horrible thing that happened that we survived, because that is the history of the Jewish people. And there's never anything that's, as far as a Jewish holiday is concerned, off the top of my head, that's purely happy without a bit of bitterness or sadness. And that's funny. That's really funny that even when you're celebrating, you have to remember that we suffered. That's a good song.
And so Toby, you know, a big part of your career was the miniseries, The Holocaust. I mean, so how do you go from that to sort of singing about imploring your on-screen daughter to remember, you know, the Holocaust?
It's actually a very huge arc. When we did the Holocaust miniseries, which was the second miniseries in the history of television, it followed roots, and it would change the textbooks in Germany and start to educate an entire country that this actually happened. And Germany healed very well. I hope the other countries who participated also faced what happened, just like we are facing what we did to people of color in the United States and what our history has been. I remember Elie Wiesel coming up to me in 1978 after the miniseries was released, and he went, "Tovah, how can you do this? How can you do a miniseries about the Holocaust? It's like a soap opera. You reduce it to nothing. There are no words for it." Meanwhile, he had written Night and everything, and he was a wonderful man. I said, "Elie, we're not doing the Holocaust miniseries for you. We're doing the Holocaust miniseries for people who live in some of our states, particularly in the West, who think the Holocaust is the horror." And then I got the Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, and the Holocaust was the horror. So we did the horror to the Holocaust, and it was hysterical. I mean, it gave Springtime for Hitler a run for its money. And again, to produce great comedy, you try to produce farce, and farci in French means overstuffed, like that. So pass the butter isn't funny, but pass the butter is funny. So just the lyrics would take care of the overblown situation. The Holocaust, remember, we can't forget the Holocaust. Remember, that was one of my lyrics. And then we would try to do the Kazatsky while we did the Cantria. It was crazy, irreverent, hysterical, but I bet it stopped the conveyor belt. And I bet it had some people listening. And if you want to be self-serious, you have no place in Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. Let them write for you and do your work. And that's what we did. And I got to be with my sweet friend, Patty, and we exchanged some old stories about some old experiences that's in the book, but I'm not bringing it up in this webinar.
Yeah, the book's pretty juicy, I have to say. Lilyville, not just about your mom, about some like potential love interests.
Potential love interests, you never know.
So,
listen, when I married Andrew Harris Levy, my mother was so thrilled. Wait a minute, I have a cough drop. This is very Rachel Bloom. I have a cough drop. Oh, it's gone. Okay. When I married Andy Levy, he's a Harvard lawyer. My father was a Harvard lawyer. Look, Rachel Bloom's father was a lawyer. These were our professions: doctors, lawyers, professors. When I married the right boy, she breathed a sigh of relief. She built a throne to Andy Levy. On my wedding day, I just gotten 5 awards on Broadway for Yentl, right? My first nomination, and won the other stuff. And she said, "Tovah, darling, you can do whatever you want today." And I was just thinking television, movies, you know, going in, and eventually I would do Holocaust. And only she said, "You're marrying a Harvard lawyer." That was her value system. That was her value system. So I operated on that value system to save Rebecca, you know, from Josh Chan, whom I called. I can't even say it. I won't say it on the webinar. The other thing that happened, talk about No Limits. I'm reading this thing. It says mother is 39 and she's in her bra and panties. And I said, I wonder who's doing this. So I called Arlene and I said, who's the body double? And they said, body double? It's you. I said, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? You know, getting older is when you wake up and your breasts are down to your belly button and you say, what the hell has happened? You know, mommy's naked and it's not a pretty sight. What are you talking about? So no, you're going to be great. Be great. It's you. So that led to push-ups, lettuce, sit-ups, doubling Pilates lessons, and of course, coiffing my hair. And they did this wonderful thing, which I wish I could do. I've had no plastic surgery, in case you were wondering. That's why my face looks like the map of Manhattan. So I keep working because I'm the only person my age who can move her face, and probably Patty LuPone too. But they put tape at the back of your neck like that. And then they put a little wig on and they pulled it back like that. So I was in California. I mean, I was in California, but my face was like in Tokyo. It was fabulous. You know, you could give me kitty litter for Hanukkah. And I was the 39-year-old. And then there was a part where I answered the door in my bra and panties because I'm not expecting anybody, Rachel, and it's the boyfriend. And I say, this is the line from the show. I didn't know you were bringing the Oriental. That's all I say. And then as I go up the stairs, I take my bra off. And it's just crazy, but it's crazy Rachel Bloom. It's inside her genre, as she would write for me. So I would be there for her inside that universe of her. And I guess she dragged Aline Bross McKenna into it too.
Well, it is fully Aline's universe with me. I want to give due credit to Aline's sick brain. It is our sick brain child together.
So sick, but ballasted by talent. You still had to do the steps. You still had to hit the note in the center of your pitch. You still had to do the take. You still had to know your lines. And I remember getting to Hollywood and they said to me, don't worry about where's the bathroom. We'll break it up for you. We'll break it up. And I said to myself, you're not going to have to break this up for me. I have one chance to be here with you and to prove to you that I can do this so well that you won't, that you'll stick around with me. And that's what happened. It's great. I love the job, Rachel. Thank you for the job.
You're welcome.
So I'm going to read some very nice things that people have to say about you in the Q&A, and then we'll get to a few special questions. Someone says of Where's the Bathroom? The song and performance were brilliant. Love hearing about how they came to be. Someone says y'all Jewish queens are a hoot. Someone says amazing, all of you, all of this. Someone says Rachel, you kick ass. Someone says, Rachel, I struggle with OCD and have never read anything on the topic that I related to so intensely. I read the chapter in your book to all my friends and they were like, whoa, that's what's going on in your brain. Thank you for sharing the story and for giving voice to others. And that comes with a little heart emoticon. I've never felt more identified with a show than with Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. We have a lot of Tovah. I love your tribute to your relationship with your mother, especially after your father's passing. People really like your mom's line about you should make a living on a trapeze. Tovah, someone says you're always a class act. Okay, so let's get to some questions. You know, first of all, Tovah, we have a lot of people asking, a lot of Sarah Lawrence alumna here who are asking who your Don is. I don't know what that means, but you must.
My Don was Ilya Wax, and he is vociferously thanked at the cast party in Lilyville. He probably has the longest credit because he was the first one. I came to him, I'd been in English honors at Scarsdale High. We were in a place, as you know, which without grades, so I felt I was really at sea, but it was a place where I could admit failure. And I went to my Don, I said, Professor Wax, I can't write. When I would be asked for a 5-paragraph composition in the 45-minute class, I'd bite all my nails off. That's why I always have a manicure, so I don't chomp it myself. And he said, you may not be able to write, but you're sure able to talk. Talk to me about Hedda Gabler and push down play and record, and then type for me what you said, and then we'll structure it. And he helped me. And he began a kernel of belief that at least I had something to contribute, some original ideas that then could be organized. And what's very funny, and I've never put this together or ever said this, when I handed in that first manuscript, there were beautiful pearls unstrung on a coffee table. Again, structure. So obviously I hit structure later. I go inductively to the words of people and then try to get a phrase, try to get a system, try to get a movement, if you will, try to get a full sonata. But I had to go back and restructure the book. And the minute I structured it, as a theater piece, this structure I've been doing since 1971. It's my 50th year on as an equity actor on a professional stage and in movies and TV.
So Rachel, speaking of the
I almost went to Sarah Lawrence, and I don't know, I'm starting to think maybe I made the wrong decision.
Well, I'm sure Tish gave you training.
Go to a textbook and go, get out of here. Study. Or no, we don't care. It's New York. Don't
Wow. That's what I heard about Juilliard too. It's really tough. And of course, Michael Langham headed Juilliard for a while, and he was just dreadful to me. And if you'd like to know how, read the book. But Steoff mentioned, hit it bounces back up.
So Rachel, we have a question. We have two for you. I heard you went to Camp Taconic. What plays were you in?
Camp Taconic. I went to Camp Taconic.
Oh, sorry, that's for Tovah. That's for Tovah. Sorry. Rachel, I don't know. Did you go to camp? Were you in camp plays?
I was in Tovah, so that's Tovah for me.
Well, you go. Go.
I did
camp gossip.
I did day camps. I did like theater day camps because there are quite a lot of good ways to do theater near where I grew up. Sorry.
It's okay. I went to Camp Taconic. My children, Brandon and Amanda, went to Camp Taconic in Hinsdale, Massachusetts, under Bob Canoy and every other person from Ethical Culture who was really quite marvelous and wept bitterly when the Rosenbergs were fried in the 50s. These were great Jewish ethicists, liberals. It was a wonderful place. We would start every morning with sing. But in my when I would have been a senior, I was sent to France by my parents to live with the clients of my father in the south of France with my brother. And it was a life-changing thing. I was in 8th grade. And then I went to camp for 2 weeks for the senior banquet. And I didn't go back for my teenage year. I went on to National Music Camp. But I loved Camp Taconic. I won the Triple Crown in tennis of junior camp and the Double Crown later on in senior camp. It was exciting. So very grateful for Camp Taconic.
Camp Taconic. So Rachel, what are your favorite comedy sci-fi books? Give us some rents.
It's really more like, when I think of comedy sci-fi, I think more of like movies. I mean, it's like I want to say, really, Kurt Vonnegut is probably the funniest sci-fi writer. I mean, Slaughterhouse-Five has made me laugh out loud a bunch. I'm trying. I love comedy sci-fi. I need to come up with some examples of that, don't I? I really love generally the work of Brian K. Vaughan as far as graphic novels, even when it's not a comedy per se. He's so sharp and so funny. And then you have just like, this is fantasy, but like movies like Galaxy Quest that are just like amazing, funny, but incredibly high concept. That movie is unbelievable. I'm gonna think of literally 30,000 more examples when I leave. I wish I'd had a list.
So we have a few questions that I'm sort of going to mash together. They're essentially about how motherhood changed both of your relationships with your own mothers. We have a question for you, Rachel, about how becoming a mother changed how you saw Naomi, the character of Naomi, obviously played by Tovah. And Tovah, for you, if your relationship with your mother impacted how you play matriarchs, which someone points out you sort of often do. So I don't know who wants to take this one. This is a biggie.
Well, first of all, Rachel wasn't a mother when I played her mother. That's very important. She wasn't pregnant, so she wouldn't be influenced by the birth of. Well, she would be. I can't speak for her, but I know she wasn't a mother.
I was only from a daughter's point of view. In general, here's what you realize is that it's very hard. It is really, especially that first year. It's hard, and you appreciate what your parents did for you. You marvel that you used to be this, that you used to be like your baby. Like when you have a 1-month-old baby, they are truly unable to do almost nothing. They're completely helpless. So you're seeing parts of yourself. It suddenly made every storyline between parents and children more interesting for me in that now I'm seeing both sides. And also storylines where it was from the parents' point of view, I now am starting to appreciate a lot better. It just opened up a whole new perspective on the world for me that I hadn't thought about or considered. And then also I'm not a particularly sensitive viewer, but I really can't watch TV or read articles about children or babies being hurt now. And it's not like I sought those out, but I could handle it. And now it messes me up for days. So it is cut me off, I think, from certain things. Like there are certain things I won't watch or read now because I know it'll just mess me up.
And Tovah, what about you? How did becoming a mother change your relationship with your mother?
Well, the first rapprochement was marrying Andy Levy. I went to Sarah Lawrence for my mother. I wanted to go to Vassar because I liked the furniture at Vassar. That was a profound reason. And I didn't go to Vassar because you want to study acting? Forget it. Why we're sending you to university, get an education first. So I was a philosophy major. Said, and if you go to Sarah Lawrence, maybe you can commute into New York. Maybe one of those studios will take you. And Uta Hagen did, and she became my first teacher. Uta Hagen was one of the greatest teachers of my life. She taught me how to mother because she didn't criticize the student, she redirected the student. She would see sometimes horrifying work, I'm sure, and she'd go, that's really interesting. That's interesting. Why don't we try it this way? So when I started to coach girls, 5 to 10-year-old girls for the city of New York in soccer, and they'd say, Coach, I made a goal. I just made a goal in practice. I made it with my elbow. I said, that is so interesting. Why don't we try it with your foot? Let's try it with your foot. It's just an idea. Let's try it with you. So she taught me to redirect. And what happened, besides the first medal, which was to marry Andy Levy, because that's where my fate would be sealed. And I had a father who said, don't ever beg a man for a hat, which means make your own money and be independent so you can buy your own clothes, etc. He really saved my life. And in ways, I won't say saved my marriage, made this a sparkling marriage, a 2-career marriage where we've been working together. We're married over 44 years. So we've had 88 years of labor together. And the second wonderful thing was giving birth, of course, to Brandon in 1983 and Amanda in 1988. And watching my mother bloom around the children, that was very interesting to see her express herself around my kids the way she never did around me. So that was bittersweet in that sense, but also my mother and I bonded. And yes, I realized all those deeds. I was so busy in rehearsals for my Broadway show where I was on the marquee, I didn't catch that one of my children couldn't read. That was really something. And in my family, if you can't mother your children, they go like this, you're a flea, you're nothing. So I stopped doing unlimited runs for 13 years. When that child got into Harvard, I did Goldust Balcony. But it's not that collegiate school for boys screwed up, they did. They taught the whole reading program and 20 out of 40 boys didn't learn, but I didn't catch it. I wasn't doing my crucial job. You know, there's no understudy for a mother, no understudy. And that was something my mother taught me. My mother and my relationship, as I became more inside the custom of marriage, it happened to be a heterosexual marriage, it still is. She happens to have a heterosexual marriage, so that wasn't a reach. I married a Jewish boy, she married a Jewish boy, married a boy from Harvard, both of us did. Our son went to Harvard, and the most important thing is Andy's mother was a classical pianist, my mother was a classical pianist, and I was a classical pianist. So Andy and I were brought up with the same music. So my mother adored Andy, understood Andy, and our relationship just kept on the spiral up, particularly after I turned 40. And she said, how much longer are you going to blame me? And I realized my mother wouldn't be around forever. And a few years later, my father would die. I remember saying at his funeral, it's okay that you died. It's not okay that I have to live the rest of my life without you. And I must say that writing this memoir dug up a lot of feelings about my parents. I cry for my parents, and I'm already a senior citizen. And we are always the children of our parents, always. And the 10 Commandments are right. Honor thy father and mother, because you really want to be complete with them when they pop off. You want to have a grudge. You want to be not speaking to your people who gave you your life. Good luck. Good luck. So make sure you're complete with your parents. And I was complete. I was complete.
It's wonderful. So Rachel, we have a lot of questions about what's going, like, is Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, is there going to be a continuation of it? Is it coming to Broadway? What's going on with the Nanny musical? There's also someone here who runs the Israeli Crazy Ex-Girlfriend fan group, and she needs an update. They need an update from the Nanny, about the Nanny musical.
Sure. So, first of all, someone tweeted at me, is there going to be a Crazy Ex-Girlfriend reboot? We ended like 2 years ago. So let's all settle down. Let's all settle down. The Nanny musical, it's so funny because when something is announced, people then understand it to be completed and imminent. But when that was announced, I was just in the beginning stages. And now I'm in the middle stages. I have completed most of the lyrics for the songs of Act 1. We're in the writing process. So that's where we are. And if you know anything about the theater, we're not even in the pipeline of the theater. Once you have a completed work, the table reads and the workshops and the investor, it's a whole thing. So it's happening, it's being written, but writing is a process. So I understand I'm getting, tweets and messages saying, can I work on the show? It's not a show yet. It's a series of documents. There's no one cast. It's gonna be a process. So everyone, let's all have an excited patience.
I love that.
That's a good one.
Because everyone's like, oh my God, when, like, there was someone on Instagram who's messaging me. It's like in my, it's in my like kind of big message folder. And I don't see everything in there, but I do see that someone, it's like day 175 of messaging Rachel Bloom until she makes the Nanny musical. And it's like, that's a complete misunderstanding of how you make a musical. You don't just make a music, it's a whole, okay. I get it, you want it, we all want it. It's very exciting and it's happening, but it's gonna be a little bit of time.
I respect that. So someone is sending love and hugs to both of you from Austin and wants to know, Tovah, where and when will you be performing the Dr. Ruth play? So we've got a Nanny musical and a Dr. Ruth play.
I'll be performing it in California where nobody's allowed in the theater, and they'll film my performance. But then I'm going right to Bay Street, and under the baton of Scott Schwartz, who took me to Broadway as Golda Meir, he will be overseeing the production that's originally directed by David Ellenstein of Becoming Dr. Ruth. So I'll be live in June 4th, which is Dr. Ruth's 94th birthday, and 93rd birthday. Let me see, June the 4th, 1928. So I guess it's 94th birthday, right? Yeah, I think so. Anyway, so it'll be her birthday, and we're going to run through June 27th. And Equity has just given the okay. There are 85 people allowed in the theater per night. If you really want to see it, get your ticket, because I believe we will sell out since we're allowed only a third of the house. And nobody's going to make much of a living from that kind of a stat, but we all want to do the play. And then we hope to bring the play to other theaters that are beginning to open up. It is a real high to play Ruth Westheimer, because Ruth Westheimer doesn't give up, and Ruth Westheimer believes what she's doing. And the fact that she wanted to become a sex therapist because of the deprivation of touching that she experienced at 10 years old. She had the great luck of being one of 300 children from Germany put on a kinder transport to Switzerland, living in an orphanage for 6 years, where when she finished the war, she would learn that both her parents, her grandparents, her entire family was wiped out, and she would be given a certificate to be a domestic, to be a housekeeper in Switzerland. It was then that she was recruited to go to Palestine to fight for the Jewish state. She became a sniper, married a wonderful boy that was in the army who wanted to be a doctor, and there were no medical schools in Israel in 1948-50, and they had to go to Paris, and she put herself into the Sorbonne, and from that journey, she eventually got herself to America, 4th class in the bottom of a boat, and she applied for a scholarship at the New School that was specifically for a victim of the Holocaust. And she always says, I am not a survivor of the Holocaust, I'm an orphan of the Holocaust. I was never in the camps. But they gave her the scholarship at the new school. She got a master's, she got a doctorate at Columbia. And she became Dr. Ruth because nobody could pronounce Westheimer when she had sexually speaking on the radio, and then on the radio, exactly. And then eventually on the television, she was Dr. Ruth. So that's it. I'm playing her, and it's a great honor to have done Ruth Bader Ginsburg. When I was with the Supreme Court Justice, I said, how do you want to be remembered? I'm going to be your voice out in the universe. And the Madam Justice said, I want people to know I'm funny. I thought I was going to lose it right in chambers. So that's what I'm going to do next month. And then I'm writing a pitch, and talk about beginning stages. I'm writing a pitch for Lilyville to become a television series. And though I am the daughter and the wife of lawyers, and we're not supposed to say anything until contracts are signed, I am putting it out in the universe. That is my intention. I am looking for writing partners. I'm looking for a writing room, and I will start to take production meetings to pitch Lilyville, mother, daughter, and other roles I've played as a television series. And of course, I'm going to play Lily. I would like to play Tovah as well. We'll see how the budget goes. But I want to play Lily.
So I love this. So we're gonna do one final question. It's like a two-parter, because someone is saying, I loved all your scenes together in Crazy Ex-Girlfriend and found the relationship so complex and moving. Do you have a favorite episode / interaction between the two of you? And then I'm gonna add my own, which is sort of, you know, this idea of Tovah, your relationship with your mother softened and changed so much as you both got older and experienced more. So can you give us like, where do we see Rebecca and Naomi? I know there's gonna be no reboot just yet, but like, when does their relationship change? So two-parter, a tough one.
Well, the big change is she set emotional boundaries. The last time we saw her with her mother, she said, you know, these are the boundaries you need to adhere to, or you won't be in my life. And the fact is, that's what you need to do. Setting emotional boundary. You cannot, and this is, you know, part of general mental health as well, obviously, but especially with family, you cannot control how someone else is going to behave. You can control what your reaction is when that behavior is directed at you and when it is counter to your happiness. And I think that was very cool and healthy, because the 4th season was all about Rebecca getting better. We so rarely see that, especially on television. Most television characters don't sink to the low she got, but also it's not as dramatically propulsive, someone getting better, right? It's almost more of a subtle story. But I was really happy and proud that we didn't just end the mother-daughter relationship on dysfunction. And I think that's a lesson that we have in general about familial relationships on television, where people will do things that cross many lines and many boundaries. I mean, it's what made Everybody Loves Raymond so delightful, right? And they'll fight and they'll say, don't do this. But then they'll make up and it'll be the same thing, because you're making episodic television and you need to last for 10 seasons. But in actuality, if someone is doing something that consistently bothers you and infringes upon your happiness and affects your mental health, and you're of my generation, you can change that. You maybe can't change them, but you can set boundaries for yourself. And it's not a narrative that we get a lot. And so I'm proud of, because I also think it's a gift when you set boundaries for yourself, you're also setting boundaries for someone else. And I like to think that what Rebecca was doing with Naomi was also giving her the gift of saying, you don't have to agonize over me the way you do. It's okay. I'm okay. That is purely me saying it from a daughter to a mother. But I was very proud that we did that.
I love that. And what is your favorite scene that you and Tovah shared?
I love the big scene that she and I had in that Christmas episode in the 1st season. It was very emotional. And I remember I had this, Tovah, I don't know if you remember, I had this mic that had like a fuzzy thing on it because we were shooting an outside scene. And so I was literally like, I was crying, and I'm like not a crier. And so I was, so like acting proud of myself. I was crying, and the fuzzy thing kept showing from my shirt. And I was like, no, fuck, that was a good take.
Tovah, what about you? What was your favorite scene from Crazy
Same,
Ex-Girlfriend?
the whole episode, the Christmas special. It was a thrilling way to be invited to join a series, and I loved it all. I would have gone, and if they had written me, to show up at every episode, I would have done that. And it's the other thing you learn about a series, that it's not just that the camera comes first. What comes first is the story. And I love the Christmas episode because I had a lot to do, and it challenged my abilities, and I felt I hit a standard of excellence to contribute to an incredibly gifted team, astonishing team of actors and performers. So that was good. And yes, our relationship, like any journey of the mother-daughter, it transmogrifies, it changes, it transforms. And my mother and I had such boundaries between us that we had to break down boundaries to interweave and to benefit fully from each other. And we did it. Lilyville has a very happy ending. She lived so long, we solved it all. We had a lot of time. We had the time Rachel's talking about for the Nanny musical. We had that time. We had it in spades.
Say, I'm very excited about all the excitement about the Nanny musical. I'm very excited about it. I've been watching a bunch of the Nanny on HBO Max. I didn't want to be a downer. I'm just saying it's not going to be tomorrow, but please don't maintain your excitement. Keep it going, people.
So this is great. So until everyone can watch the Nanny musical, until everyone can watch you play Dr. Ruth Tovah, we have such great books tonight. Rachel Bloom, Tovah Feldshuh, thank you so much for being our wonderful guest.
Thank you.
Wonderful conversation. It's been a real treat.
For us too.
Thank you for having us so much. This was so fun.
Bye-bye.
Sorry
Bye, Rach.
we didn't get to.